In this video, I will provide a decluttered overview of what is meditation. So we'll look at the origins of meditation, different traditions of meditation, and how it's changed over the years, particularly in the 19th, 20th century when it was kind of introduced to a non-secular, non-religious audience in the West. So this video is meant to be a broad overview and a decluttered overview of the history and origins and development of meditation. If you have anything else to share on this subject, please do share in the comments below so that we can all learn and develop our knowledge together as a community. Meditation is pretty interesting in that it has ancient roots with early recorded practices in Hinduism and later in Buddhism. And the practice of meditation has spans across many different regions and cultures and spans across thousands of years. Some of the earliest meditation texts are the Upanishads, which are philosophical scriptures in Hinduism. And these date back around about 2,500 years ago in ancient India. Now, the Upanishads are a collection of texts that were written across a time frame. So I say around about 2,500 years ago as a sort of general guide to the timeline. But archaeological evidence such as cave paintings suggest that early humans were practicing ritualistic or contemplated practices even before then, so in like early hunter-gatherer societies. And this kind of leads us on to the different traditions of meditation that have evolved over the years. So if we go all the way back to prehistoric times, shamanic traditions evolved in early hunter-gatherer societies, and shamanic practices included things like chanting, drumming, and inducing trance-like states or altered states of consciousness to connect with nature, ancestors, and spiritual realms. And shamanism was practiced to kind of heal and guide communities. And then we come on to Hinduism. Formal meditation practice is deeply tied to Hinduism, and Hinduism has its roots in Vedic culture in ancient India. And meditation in Hinduism is deeply tied to the Vedas and the Upanishads, which are scriptures. So the Vedas came first and then later the Upanishads. And the Upanishads saw meditation as a tool for self-realization and a union with ultimate reality, and that ultimate reality was called Brahman. And the Upanishads, I think, marked a shift away from ritualistic practices in Vedic times in ancient India towards more internal, introspective practices. So less ritualistic and external and more introspective, internal contemplation to unite with ultimate reality, Brahman. And later in Hinduism, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras was written around about 2,000 to 2,500 years ago. These are around about rough figures. And Patanjali's Yoga Sutras was basically kind of like a meditation manual. And meditation, dhyāna, was one of the advanced stages in the Yoga Sutras, basically 8 limbs of yoga. And meditation is an advanced limb of yoga. And the whole of the Yoga Sutras is kind of like a manual to meditate, to reach a state of meditation and meditative absorption, and to reach samadhi, a form of enlightenment. Then let's come on to Buddhism. So Buddhism was born in the 4th to 5th century BCE in India, and the Buddha kind of revolutionized meditation. The Buddha, before his enlightenment, practiced some of the kind of like extreme forms of asceticism that was around in India at that time. So the kind of like extreme ascetic practices would be like abstaining from like food, abstaining from society, you know, like going to live in the forest for days, basically like extreme forms of abstaining from the external world. And the Buddha kind of he advocated a middle path, so avoiding extreme asceticism and extreme practices, and avoiding indulgence, to find a middle path, a middle road. And the Buddha advocated more of a practical and accessible form of meditation that focused on things like mindfulness and cultivating insight through mindfulness and concentration. And different Buddhist traditions, schools of Buddhist traditions have evolved from the Buddha and the Buddha's teachings, such as Zen, Tibetan, and Theravada traditions. There are some schools of Buddhism, traditions of Buddhism, that still practice some like mystic forms of meditation. So the Buddha didn't reject all forms of ascetic practice and mystical practices, but he didn't necessarily advocate them in his teachings. Over in China in the 4th century, Taoist meditation practices were being further formalized, and Taoist meditation practices were focused on cultivating internal life force energy known as qi, and aligning with the Tao, the natural order, the Tao. And practices include breathwork, movement meditations, and a technique called sitting and forgetting. And those practices were aimed at cultivating life force energy and living in harmony with the natural order of the Tao. So traditionally, meditation practice has been tied to a religious or spiritual or philosophical tradition, and usually is about exploring the nature of the self and nature of our existence. And the goal or the purpose of meditation was enlightenment, spiritual liberation, or moksha. Whereas if you fast forward to, let's say, 19th to 20th century in the West, that's when Eastern practices and teachings were brought over to the West by teachers such as Swami Vivekananda. I hope I pronounced that right. And gradually over the 19th and 20th century, meditation was introduced to and adapted to a Western audience, or a non-religious, non-secular audience. And many Westerners were interested in the non-secular aspects of meditation, so not connected to any spirituality or religion or philosophy, but was more interested in meditation for, stress reduction, improving focus and productivity, improving quality of sleep, quite practical benefits of meditation to help in their daily life, which, let's face it, is super busy and overstimulated. And so things like mindfulness-based stress reduction became really popular in the West by, what was his name? John something. And around this time, and in the 21st century, science started to validate the benefits of meditation on mental and physical health. And that obviously appealed even more to a Western audience, because science was now showing that meditation can do all these things that are helpful for us to function and live and manage our mind better. And so meditation has become quite popular now. And, we have all these apps of how to meditate, and most people I know are meditating for the reason of stress reduction, improving their quality of sleep, managing anxiety. So the reason or purpose of meditation is quite different to the origins of meditation. And cultural influences will have impacted that as well. So, your beliefs and the culture in which you are born into will influence your goal of your meditation, the goal of your meditation practice. With all that said, let's come back to the question, what is meditation? Well, if we just look at the yogic perspective, because obviously I am a yoga teacher, I have yoga background, and that's the tradition I've studied the most. So from a yogic perspective, there is a difference between focus and meditation. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is a classical yogic text and kind of like a meditation manual, an ancient one, there is a difference between focus, dhyāna, and meditation, dhyāna. So focus comes first, so learning to focus on a single point of object, like your breath. But it doesn't have to be a breath, it could be any single point of focus. So first you have to train your mind to focus on something, and then you are primed to enter meditation, dhyāna. And meditation is a state of being, a state of awareness that is kind of in between your thoughts, like that gap, that space in between your thoughts. That's where meditation happens, or meditation talking from a traditional perspective, or at least from a perspective of the Yoga Sutras, and it happens in the present moment, because that's the only moment that really exists, really. But our mind stops us from realizing and being in the present moment. So there is actually kind of two ways to look at meditation. There's meditation, which is the state of being in the present moment, and a state of awareness in the present moment. And then there's the meditation practice, and most of the time what we're actually doing is practicing meditation, and the period of meditation, that uninterrupted awareness, is very small, and it might not even exist for the your first year or two of practicing meditation. But with practice, that period of uninterrupted awareness, that period of meditation, it becomes easier to enter into meditation, and you can stay in meditation for longer periods. And that's what your practice leads you up to. Now, the reason for why people meditate will be different depending on the individual themselves, and the culture that they've grown up in and the beliefs that they hold. At its core, meditation is about observing the mind and moving past the habitual thought patterns of the mind to connect to a deeper sense of the self, a deeper aspect of consciousness beyond the thinking mind, and essentially to find greater awareness and greater grounding in the present moment, which our mind doesn't like to be in. Our mind's always in the past or the future. But in meditation, you arrive into the present moment. And as I said before, that period of meditation, of being in the present moment, it might not even be there for the first year or two of you practicing meditation. But with time and practice, that period of staying in the present moment starts to increase, and it becomes easier for you to stop the mental chatter and to ground yourself into the present moment. meditation can be religious, it can be non-religious, it can be spiritual, it can be non-religious, non-spiritual. You don't have to have any particular set of beliefs to practice meditation. And in fact, meditation will probably lead you to let go of most or all of the beliefs you actually hold. In one way, meditation can be described as just letting go of everything up here, like all your thoughts, your beliefs, the contents of your mind, everything that you have come to believe and learn up to now. It's almost like letting go of all of that to find the present moment, to find that meditation of uninterrupted awareness, which is kind of beyond your mind. If you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to support my mission of making yoga affordable and accessible, please do consider subscribing to my channel, because that really does help my mission. Thank you.